All right, this is Bible Time, episode 94, and we are in Psalm 26. So go ahead and read through Psalm 26, pray over it, whether you're with your family or whether you are alone, and we will get right into it. So the first thing to take note of, I am using the NASB translation, and they have made the decision to insert a psalm here, and you can see if you're doing the NASB, it's in italics. And so in reality, the only words that are actually there in the Hebrew is of David, and this decision to put a psalm was probably just to smooth it over, because just saying of David is shorthand, and we talked about this a little bit with Psalm 25, but it is worth noting that Psalms 25, 26, 27, 28 are all grouped together, and they all start the same way, just saying of David. And so it might be worth it for you guys to even read through and kind of think through, okay, why would these Psalms be grouped together? What's the theme? What is going on in Psalm 24? What happens in Psalm 29, Psalm 30? To kind of see why are these grouped together? Is there a purpose there? And we don't have time to do that just for the purposes of what we're doing, just going through the Psalm. But I recommend it. Read through it. Look for mentions of the presence of God in the temple and things like that, because you'll find that that is very present there. So that's Psalms 25, 26, 27, 28. So let's get into the text here. It says, "Vindicate me, O Yahweh, for I have walked in my integrity." So this vindicate me is, prove my innocence. Come to my aid and defend me because I have walked in my integrity. Right? Walked being the pattern of my life, what I have been doing in my integrity, that I've been consistent in my claims. I've been honest, and we'll see that there's going to be this contrary description of the way that these other people who are accusing him and the wicked men that he is contrasting himself with do not have integrity, and they are liars and schemers and deceivers. So he's asking the Lord to vindicate me. This is an appeal to God to come and judge for himself whether David is innocent. He says, "And I have trusted in Yahweh without wavering." Right? So the pattern of my life has been integrity, and I have walked and I have trusted in Yahweh and without wavering, without slipping. Right? Sometimes you'll see this prayer of David that he doesn't want his feet to slip. And if you think about what it would mean that if we're using a lot of these Psalms in the time that we're going to worship in the temple, and this is supposed to be in the heart and the mind of the people in Israel, and even as the church, specifically as an Israelite, when you walk throughout the land of Israel is very similar to Southern California as far as the terrain. There's hills. It's a little rockier than California is, but the idea of being on a path that is level and firm is very clear even to us. If you're hiking, we don't want to be on a path where we can slip. And if we think about this path being the way that we walk and live our lives to honor the Lord, David is saying that I've been on a path where I've not slipped. I have not wavered. I'm not going side to side. I've been on this path. And so he invites God in verse 2. He says, "Examine me, O Yahweh, and try me and test me. Test my mind and my heart." Right? So this threefold request that God would get into the mind and heart of David. David asks that the Lord would look into his intentions, his passions, and he uses three different ways of describing that: examine, try, and test. Right? My mind and my heart. This idea that David has opened his life up for the Lord to examine and to see for himself. "For your loving kindness is before my eyes." This is what David is crediting for his integrity. Right? I have walked on this path and I have not wavered because your loving kindness is before my eyes. Your hesed love, your relational love, the love that describes the way you interact with your people, that you are faithful even when we're not. I have kept that in my mind. It's before my eyes. Right? It's the glasses, the lens by which I view my life and the world, that I am seeing you and what you've done. And I have walked in your truth. Right? So my perspective of my eyes is your loving kindness, and the way that I walk is in your truth. Your truth, your faithfulness. The idea that God is the one who is faithful, and God is the one who sustains David, and it's because he believes that he lives in light of that. Right? He lives in light of that. And as we think about what Christ has done for us, we don't have a fear that our obedience is going to have to lead to our righteousness. This idea that if I don't do enough of these works, that I'm going to get to the end and it's not going to be good enough. We don't have that fear. right? What we have is the love of Christ in our purview that we see through the lens of what Christ has done. And we know that we can walk in integrity and live a life that honors the Lord because there is no eternity at stake for us, that the Spirit is the guarantee of our inheritance. And so, like David, we can understand that we need to have this relational, committed, faithful God in our eyes. And the ultimate description and example of that love is what he did on the cross. So David's saying, that's why I have this integrity. Verse 4, I do not sit with deceitful men. I do not sit with deceitful men. This whole passage here, this whole group of verses, and really this whole psalm could basically be described as the example of Psalm 1. Right? Psalm 1 being the blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. Right? And comparing the one who does that is, the one who delights in the law is like a tree, but the wicked are like chaff who are blown away, and they will not be in the assembly of the righteous. And what we see in Psalm 26 is that there is a practical outworking where David is saying, I am the one who trusts in your word, and I'm not like these other ones. Right? I don't sit with deceitful men, nor will I go with pretenders, ones who pretend to live a life that they don't actually live. Deceivers, right? I hate the assembly of evildoers, and I will not sit with the wicked. And so David is saying that I have not been perverted by these bad influences, by these evil men. I'm not trying to be influenced by the assembly of evildoers when a bunch of wicked people get together. I won't go with pretenders. That's not the pattern of my life. I won't sit with deceitful men. They're not going to give me counsel, right? I won't sit with the wicked. So what David is saying is that I haven't done all of these things. These are the opposite kinds of people that I am, because these are the people who all take counsel in their own evil together. But what I do is I actually take counsel from God and from the truth and from what he has done, from his hesed love and from his truth. Verse 6 says, I shall wash my hands in innocence, and I will go about your altar, O Lord. So what's going on here? What is this to wash your hands in innocence? What David is saying is that his life isn't just a life that in order to go to the altar of God, you would have to do these ceremonies. You would have to be ritually clean. You would have to be pure, right? There's things that are pure. There's things that are impure. There's people that are holy, and there's ways to be unholy. And so within the system of Israel, within the law that God had given, they had to do all these things. And what David is actually saying is that his hands are actually washed with innocence, meaning he doesn't have to wash away the sin in his life, because it's not even that he needs to wash away that sin, because he's just not guilty, right? He can actually wash his hands in innocence. So the way he gets to approach God is that he is innocent, right? And I will go about your altar, O Lord, meaning that I will be where you are. I will be where your presence is, where the sacrifices are made. To go about could either mean to walk around. Older translations would say to compass your altar, or it can even mean to wrap your arms around the altar. But what David is saying is that I am there where your presence is, right? And it's because I'm actually innocent. I don't have to do all the ceremonies, because it's actually that I am innocent before you in regards to all these wicked men. Verse 7, why do I want to be there? Why do I want to be at your altar? Why do I want to live this life of innocence and not be like these other people? Well, that I may proclaim with the voice of thanksgiving and declare all your wonders. Right? The purpose of this is that David wants to proclaim thanksgiving and God's wonders. He wants to be the one who is testifying about the greatness of God. Right? That's why he lives the life that he lives. Verse 8, O Yahweh, I love the habitation of your house. This is what sets apart the man of God, that he loves the presence of the Lord. When you think about what was the original intention for mankind, to be in the garden with God and to bear his image and to dwell with him, to enjoy him, right? And we are trying to get back to the garden. God says he wants to dwell with his people, but when God comes to earth, the fire and the brimstone at Sinai, and the people know that they can't be with that God, or they would be destroyed because they're sinners. And so this desire to be with the Lord, how special is the temple that the Lord is pleased to dwell there. And even with all the ceremonies that they would have to do in order to get there, it was a blessing that they get to spend time with God, that God was in their land, in his house, right? That the Lord chose to live in Jerusalem, chose to dwell in Zion. And they would even say, Lord, you're a God who, what man could create a place for you to live? Right? You don't need us to build you a house, but you chose to let us do that. And so Yahweh is saying, or David is saying of Yahweh, that he loves where God dwells, the place where his glory is. He wants to be there. Do not take away my soul. Do not take my soul away along with sinners. Right? What David is asking here, nor my life with men of bloodshed, that he would be treated according to his practice of obedience, that he's saying, Lord, there's all these sinners around me. There's all these men of bloodshed, right? So sinners, we talked about it a little bit last week. This term sinners can kind of refer to those who are even, trying to do their best. It's kind of a lower description of wickedness, and that if you're a wicked man, that is who you are. But even those who are trying to honor the Lord are sometimes described as sinners. But this men of bloodshed is the other end of the spectrum. So you have sinners here, men of bloodshed. And David is saying, don't take my soul away. Don't treat me the same way as all these people. Treat me as someone who is seeking to honor you. Right? Don't treat me as those in whose hands is wicked schemes, these people who do evil. And those whose right hand is full of bribes. Right, that the hands being the things that you work with, right? Your right hand being that, the privileged position and the main goal, the main thing that you do, that these people, their whole practice is wicked and evil, right? To be full of wicked schemes is to be a deceiver, right? And to be full of bribes is to pervert justice and to forego justice because you take money instead of the cause of those who deserve justice. And so David is saying, don't treat me the same way these people will be treated. But as for me, I shall walk in my integrity, right? David confessed in verse 1 that is what he has done. He's saying, I will continue to do that. But here's something very important to notice. He still appeals to God to be gracious to him. David has no delusion that he's lived a perfect life. And we've talked about this plenty of times, but it's important to keep in your understanding, even as David confesses his innocence in regards to all these evil people around him, he still says, redeem me and be gracious to me. David is saying, as far as I can see, I'm innocent, but I know that before you, before a holy God, I still need your grace. And here's the confession that he makes. My foot stands on a level place. Right? Like a pathway that won't give away. If you're walking along a cliff path and you're walking on rocks, you need them to be level, a flat and level place. He's saying that's where I am. It's because he's saying that he trusts in the truth and loving kindness of God. Right? Loving kindness and truth, that is a level path for him. He knows that is before his eyes. That's where he is. And so he can say that he can trust that place. And this is what he believes. In the congregations, I shall bless the Lord. Right? Psalm 1 says that the wicked will not stand in the congregation of the righteous. But David is saying that I will be with those who are like me, who fear the Lord, who love the Lord. I will be in the presence of those people, and I will bless the Lord. Right? Like he said he wanted to do. He wanted to be the one who would proclaim what God has done. That's why he obeys. And that's why he seeks to be in right relationship before God. And so as we think about just what does this mean for us, the New Testament reality, if you are a believer, is that this glory of God that David so desperately wants to be in the presence of, the habitation of God that David so desperately desires, we are told that God himself came and dwelt among us, Jesus in the flesh, that the Word became flesh. And more than that, in terms of the presence of God, Jesus told his disciples it was to their advantage that he leaves so that the Spirit can come. And the Holy Spirit in our heart and in our lives is the very glory of God. And when we look at Jesus Christ, who bears the glory of God perfectly, and it says that when we behold the glory of Christ, that we are transformed more and more like him, that we get to have the glory of God dwelling in us. We get to behold the glory of God. All of these things that David so desires is true of us, and ultimately we're going to be in the presence of God. We're going to be in the congregation of the righteous, and we're going to be able to bless the Lord too. That we're going to be side by side with David in his confession. That this should become our confession, that we are praising the Lord for his presence with us and also excited for what the Lord will do in bringing us into his presence in the future. That is Psalm 26. I hope you guys are encouraged, and we have so enjoyed making these videos for you guys. Make sure to check out the rest of those Psalms that are kind of in this group, Psalm 25, 26, 27, 28. Read them all at once and see if you can mark out some of those things that seem like a common theme throughout them.